create an amazing story?
This one.
The Bronte sisters were creative people who loved to pretend.
Charlotte, Emily, and Anne wrote lots of great stories.
Hey, let's create a story. One rainy day, Yadina pretended to be
An astronaut.
One rainy day, Yadina pretended to be an astronaut. And Xavier pretended to be
A baseball player.
And Xavier pretended to be a baseball player. Yadina and Xavier pretended they were inside
A castle.
Yadina and Xavier pretended they were inside a castle. When suddenly, they pretended the floor turned into
Lava.
When suddenly, they pretended the floor turned into lava. Then, Brad pretended to rescue his friends as dun-dun-dun.
This one.
Then, Brad pretended to rescue his friends as dun-dun-dun, Rat Brad.
Yay, Brad, our brave hero!
Xavier and Yadina were proud to have such a brave friend as they climbed aboard Brad's rescue.
Bicycle.
Xavier and Yadina were proud to have such a brave friend as they climbed aboard Brad's rescue bicycle. That was amazing! The end.
Thanks for telling such a surprising story about us.
And pretending some amazing things. Just like the Bronte sisters.
I will wind them up.
Zora Neale Hurston wrote all kinds of stories.
And she shared them with people all around the world. Hey, let's create a sharing story about Brad. Brad was writing his new comic book alone in
The
Brad was
playground.
writing his new comic book alone in the playground. When suddenly Brad saw a lonely
Octopus.
octopus.
Aw, poor lonely guy.
So, Brad decided to share his comic book about
And chaos.
Agent Chaos. Reading Brad's comic book together made it so
Hungry.
hungry.
Sharing makes everything better.
So then they decided to
Have a dance party.
have a dance party.
That story was awesome!
The end.
Thanks for telling an awesome sharing story about me.
Stories are best when you share them with others.
Just like Zora Neale Hurston.
Oh. This one.
Mary Shelley used her imagination to write stories that were totally different from everybody else's. Some of her stories were spooky.
Ooh, let's create a story about Xavier. Your way. Xavier was walking in the woods when suddenly something happened that was very
Spooky.
Xavier was walking in the woods when suddenly something happened that was very spooky. He came face to face with a
Book monster.
book monster. At first, Xavier tried to
Hide.
hide. But then Xavier decided to be
Brave.
brave.
Go, Xavier!
Xavier stood bravely, holding
A piece of broccoli.
a piece of broccoli. To Xavier's surprise, the book monster said,
Let's boogie.
let's boogie.
Wow, didn't see that coming.
The end.
Thanks for making an amazing story about me.
Your own way.
Just like Mary Shelley.
Maya Angelou was a writer and poet who used her words for good.
A poet is someone who puts words together in a super special way called a poem. Some poems rhyme, which means they have words that end in the same sound, like moon and balloon.
Ooh, let's create a poem that rhymes, all about Dr. Zoom. A rhyming poem about Dr. Zoom. How should we start?
Is my counterpart.
Poem about Dr. Zoom. How should we start? Dr. Zoom is my counterpart. That means friend. What's that, Dr. Zoom? These words make you feel good? And you want more? Okay. Also, Dr. Zoom loves tea. Almost as much as...
Swimming under the sea.
Also, Dr. Zoom loves tea. Almost as much as swimming under the sea.
Wow, didn't see that coming.
Dr. Zoom's brave and tries new things, like...
Riding the swings.
Dr. Zoom's brave and tries new things, like riding the swings. Whee! So super brave. Dr. Zoom can spend all afternoon dancing.
On a spoon.
Dr. Zoom can spend all afternoon dancing on a spoon. Dr. Zoom's got the moves. Did you know Dr. Zoom's favorite power is...
Smelling a pretty flower.
Did you know Dr. Zoom's favorite power is smelling a pretty flower? What a talented super turtle. And when it's time for bed, Dr. Zoom likes to cuddle on...
A slice of bread.
And when it's time for bed, Dr. Zoom likes to cuddle on a slice of bread. Oh, Dr. Zoom. And even though our poem is just about done, Dr. Zoom, you're...
Loved a ton.
And even though our poem is just about done, Dr. Zoom, you're loved a ton. Group hug. The end.
Wow, that was a great poem.
Dr. Zoom just loves how we use our words for good.
Just like Maya Angelou. Charles Dickens used his imagination to write great stories. Stories that lots of people still love today.
Ooh, let's create a story about Brad's imagination. One day, Brad was laying down on his...
Bed.
One day, Brad was laying down on his bed. When suddenly, Brad imagined it was...
A whale.
When suddenly, Brad imagined it was a whale. And Brad imagined he was in...
The clouds.
And Brad imagined he was in the clouds. Then Brad imagined he saw...
Worms.
Then Brad imagined he saw worms.
Whoa, now that's using your imagination.
And Brad imagined he was holding a...
Banana.
And Brad imagined he was holding a banana.
Whew, my imagination is exhausting.
So Brad imagined he was relaxing in...
His bedroom.
So Brad imagined he was relaxing in his bedroom.
Ooh, now there's a story I loved.
The end.
You never know being
Thanks for
seen
telling
before.
such a silly story about my imagination.
Using your imagination makes everything more fun.
Just like Charles Dickens.
One more.
Nellie Bly wrote about some big and sometimes scary adventures she went on.
Nellie was bold. That means she was brave and willing to try new things.
Hey, let's create a story about Yadina being bold.
Okay, let's start this one.
At the playground, Yadina was too scared to try the monkey bars, so she went on.
The
At
sling.
the playground, Yadina was too scared to try the monkey bars, so she went on the swing. When suddenly, Dr. Zoom was carried away by...
A balloon.
Suddenly, Dr. Zoom was carried away by a balloon.
Hang on, Dr. Zoom.
Yadina had to be bold and chase after Dr. Zoom using her...
Jetpack.
Yadina had to be bold and chase after Dr. Zoom using her jetpack. Then, Dr. Zoom landed on top of...
A tower.
Then, Dr. Zoom landed on top of a tower. To save Dr. Zoom, Yadina had to be bold and climb up...
The pizza
to save
stairs.
Dr. Zoom, Yadina had to be bold and climb up the pizza stairs.
Okay.
Dr. Zoom, she gave her best turtle friend a big hit. The end.
Thanks for telling such a cool story about me being bold.
You really want to do something? Be bold, just like Nellie Bly.
And that's it.